I'm going to pause the record. So we are recording, and welcome to the September 20th meeting of the Southborough Historical Commission. It is 7:06 p.m. and I will call the meeting to order by noting that everyone, that would be Kevin Miller, Annie Pfaff, Kate Battles, and Grant Farrington, are present, with the exception of Jim Bloschke, who unfortunately can't make it tonight, but we do have a quorum, so we will continue. And the first thing we have on the agenda, as you know, is a visit with our guest who's already here and been promoted. Catherine McKee is the chair of the Trails Committee, of course, and she's here to talk to us tonight a little bit about the Peninsula Trail. And I don't know, we actually took a vote, and this is before Grant joined us, but last December, I think, or January, Michael brought up the Trails Committee's initiative with regard to the Peninsula Trail, and we took a vote on that actually in support. And I've seen Catherine speak on this matter on a few other committees. I sort of followed the issue, and actually the night that I appeared before Capital Planning pursuant to our ARPA request, Catherine was also there for the Peninsula Trail on an ARPA request. So we've had occasion to sort of watch each other talk about our little pet projects. So when Catherine reached out regarding the Peninsula Trail and some possible help from us with the interpretive signage component, I was very happy to invite her to stop by. And so here she is. And Catherine, welcome, and thank you so much for coming. I mean, we had nobody in the audience tonight because we're competing with the select board.
Yeah.
Just, it's like, I don't know what the comparison would be, but, the big game is on. And so, but hopefully, people always seem to watch our meetings on Zoom afterwards. So, I hope this will help get the word out tomorrow or something.
Yeah, so thanks for having us. I will try to keep this brief. I'm here to talk about two things. One, the interpretive signage that Kevin mentioned, but two, a more acute opportunity so the Trails Committee is hosting a guided history hike on October 8th, Saturday. It's the weekend of Columbus Day, and Heritage Day is on Monday. So we've done this hike before. Annie, I think you joined us last year. You and Andrew, is it? And the little one, is it Dottie or?
Yes, exactly. Dottie, she was very, very, very little, but it was fabulous. And I would love an opportunity to bring the whole family back.
Oh, good. Yeah, so we thought this year, we've done this a couple times, and it's going to be led by Andy Leahy, who is a DCR ranger, and he goes over some of the history about the building of the Sudbury Reservoir and the Fayetteville Dam. And we also have a couple of 3-ring binders where we printed out some pictures, the history of the building of both the reservoir and the dam from Digital Commonwealth. So some historical pictures that people really enjoyed. So what we were thinking about this year, we're going to do the same thing. And because we have this upcoming opportunity with the Historical Commission to have you guys help us with the interpretive signage, we thought we might have an opportunity to partner with you for this hike. It's a bit short notice, so we understand if the answer is no. But what that would entail is just have a couple of members, whoever's available, one or two, join us on October 8th. And if there's time to, for example, have you guys layer in on more history about Southborough, maybe there's something or there's a little bit of research that could be done to kind of just tag team with Andy on this history hike. And really it's because we want to kind of step it up a little bit, but also it gives the Historical Commission a little bit of an opportunity to check out the trail, to listen to the hike and this little spiel that Andy gives to kind of start thinking about the historical signage and what we're going to be doing with it. So it's kind of a twofold opportunity. So that's the one piece. And then the second piece is more to give you a heads up that we will be getting started with the signage in the next month or two. We're waiting on DCR to come through with some contracting for the Mass Trails Grant, which will be the funding source of our multiple funding sources for that piece. So we wanted to get on your calendar or get on your agenda to start that, so that's coming down the line in a couple months.
Can I ask Catherine, the signage that you're talking about, would it be a combination of sort of like waymarking kind of stuff? Would it be devoted to sort of explaining the history of the reservoir and how it was made and and all that stuff, or would it include, for instance, stuff describing, let's say, flora and even fauna that might be seen from the trail?
Good question. I think we're hoping to accomplish both. Right. So we want to be sensitive to sign pollution, so we don't want to do too much. But people are interested in both. So we have a unique opportunity here. Southborough's in a watershed, backup drinking water. What does the reservoir do? How did it come about? And then also the importance of protecting a watershed, why that's important for the wildlife and for all of us. So that's the focus. And I think with historical commission's perspective, we would want to, we are obviously not going to put on your plate a ton of work. We're going to do a lot of the legwork. What we're looking for is your expertise and your input. I mean, I'm sure some of you have dealt with these projects before. Perhaps history of Southborough a little bit more than Trails Committee might, or resources, people that do, to kind of be that second set of eyes to say, okay, this is what we propose for some of the for the sign. What do you think about that? Do you have any suggestions? That kind of stuff. So we would be happy to do most of the legwork, but obviously we're looking to you for some guidance on best practices and making sure our final product is one fact check to make sure we're sharing correct information, but also is this the type of information we should be targeting?
Are there other places in town or other trails that you administer where you have in fact placed these kinds of interpretive signs before?
Well, yes, I guess the short answer is there was an Eagle Scout, Alex Flynn, who did a historical marker project off of Deerfoot between Parkerville and Deerfoot that highlighted the Burnett Mansion. So
yeah, I've actually seen those signs. Yeah, because I walked that path.
Yeah. So I think Alex actually worked with the Historical Commission back in the day. Michael Weishen was, I believe, the chair at the time. And so they worked to get that information. And I think the Historical Commission worked in the same capacity.
Yeah, those are really nice, actually. And I just wondered if you'd envision something similar to that, because.
Well, let me share my screen because I can give you an image, which I think is easier to, I've been disabled to share. So if someone wants to give me some controls, I can show you what the signage will look like, what we're thinking about.
Okay, I've promoted you to co-host. I think
Great.
Hopefully that'll do it. Yep.
I will be respectful with my powers. So can you see my screen? See a few signs?
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is kind of what we're looking at. Obviously it's going to be sized to the area and we have to go through all the proper approvals because this is on DCR and MWA land. These are some examples. These two in the middle are examples of what is in Ashland Marathon Park. Now, these signs are a little text heavy, in my opinion. So, we're not looking to, if you look at them, they're pretty dense, so something more, with a balance with pictures and text and some, sharing some really good information. So something like this, these signs will stand the test of time. We went to 3 different vendors to get quotes, and we touched base with Ashland specifically because these signs had been in place for 7 years and weathered the, extremities well for that time length. So we thought getting word of mouth from someone who's used a trusted vendor, and it's in New York. So, so that's what we were thinking about, something like this.
Yeah, I mean, they look great. So, I'm interested. I already told Catherine that, I was familiar with the trail and where it will run. Is everybody here Grant, Kate, Annie, you were on the tour last year, so you're all familiar with where this trail actually is slated to be, or?
Yes, and I can actually,
I've seen a map of it. I've never been on the trail myself personally.
yeah, so now I'm showing the All Trails map here. And so this is Central Street, this is Route 30 Causeway. This, if you can see my cursor, this yellow dotted line, and it's also a blue dotted line, that's what we're calling the Peninsula Trail.
Right.
So it's a section of the Burroughs Loop and the Aqueduct Trail. I won't go into that too much detail, but it is a section of two regional trails, and it will intersect with a third regional trail, the Bay Circuit Trail, which comes up in here along the reservoir. And it's about 1.6 miles one way.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. We were, Catherine and I chatted the other day, and we were talking about the challenge of getting over that causeway, but that's another a challenge for another day, I suppose. But personally, I mean, I'm fully in support of this. I have a kind of personal interest in it because I want to walk on it. And so, the one thing I said is, as it so happens, I have plans on Saturday the 8th that I'm still trying to sort of wriggle around. That's a kind of that Columbus Day, or Columbus Day weekend, or Indigenous Peoples Day weekend, I guess it is now, tends to be pretty crammed for people. But if anybody on the commission, Annie, you went last year. Were you interested in going this year again, or Grant or Kate? If you're able, it's at 10 in the morning, right?
Yes, so it's gonna be 10 a.m. Yep.
Until about noon, or?
It's about 2 hours, with the stopping and the walking. And people have, if they want to attend the entire time, you can attend a smaller, piece of it.
Yeah, so I would be thrilled if anybody else on the commission would be able to make a commitment to trying to go to this, because I want the report back.
I have an interest to go. It sounded like Annie did as well, so maybe that could work out.
Yeah, I was going to say I have an interest to be there, just because things on the weekend can be a little bit up in the air with my daughter. I would feel bad committing to talking or being part of any type of presentation. But I do have an interest in being there, and would be happy to report back if I can make it.
Great. Grant, I'm not trying to rope you in, but as I understand it, right, Catherine, the DCR guy is really leading the tour. And so for instance, Grant, if you were able to commit and even could just do, you dug up a few choice nuggets that could maybe be thrown on the, as kind of garnish to the DCR expert. And that might be wonderful if you had the time to do a little digging around. I also did mention to Catherine that I thought that Sally Waters would be from the Historical Society would be a great resource to this, because she knows everything. And if she doesn't know it off the top of her head, she's always willing to go look it up, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, Kevin. I was going to mention that because I don't want to put anyone on the commission on the spot to have to do that type of research. If other people, we could, leverage the Historical Society, I think, which Sally Waters is a part of, right? Because you mentioned that. So if we wanted to loop them in and see if they could help, that would maybe ease the pressure of the research, or just we could take something off the shelf that they might have.
Right.
Make it easier.
And maybe Grant, if you're going to go, you could even talk to Sally. You know her, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, reach out and just maybe she knows some quick, things that would be helpful with regard to the creation of the reservoir system. Or, I've read myself about what I said to Catherine the other day, is that even if I were available, I've read the stuff. But I don't frankly feel sufficiently well versed in it to be able to talk off the cuff about it. So
I'm not sure if I do either, to be honest, Kevin. I was thinking more attempting for to report back, and just because I have an interest in it, but
Right.
I would definitely have some to learn a lot before being able to speak on the subject, I think.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah, so what we could do is if you prefer, we don't have to say that we're partnering with historical. We don't have to put anyone on, on the spot to do that. We can just manage it like we would normally manage it and say that, we've invited certain groups and in the outreach, to entice people. And we can let it be that way if that's going to make if that's an easier approach, we're happy to do that. And then you'll still have an opportunity.
Sound good, Grant. So no pressure. We're no
pressure.
But I really hope that, and again, I'm going to try to see if I could twist things around and sort of get there, because I'm really keen to kind of find out about this and be in the loop myself. But certainly if Grant, if you can go, and Annie maybe tentatively try to get there, then we'll have some representation there, because I do want to support this. I feel very strongly it's a kind of nice match. And then going forward, Catherine, I mean, maybe this will prompt all of us to do, a little digging and diligence in our spare time to try to, so that when, you start to actually formulate where the signs will go, what you'd like on them, and the things you're thinking about, will be prepared.
Yeah.
At least to be a second set of eyes, and make sure, because we're looking at the same thing. I mean, we've had a number of meetings now. On our next item in the agenda, I think, is to review these Southborough Center Historic District signs, and they're not that complicated, but still it takes, you know what I mean, like, because you want to get it right. I mean,
Yes.
these are going to be in bronze, and we don't want to get it wrong. And so I can appreciate. I mean, if nothing else, I'm a good proofreader, I think. So I can look at your text and try to make sure that, and we'll definitely commit to sort of vetting it and, helping in that regard, so you can have a little bit more comfort before you order the signs. And you don't have people yelling at you, because there's some, you put the quotation marks in the wrong spot, or, what I mean, whatever it is. So, good. I mean, is there anything else that we should know, or everybody?
No, I think, what we're going to start advertising probably later this week. So, of course, help us spread the word. And I think what I'll do is I'll reach out to Sally and just give her a heads up, or whoever on the commission, on the society I should speak with. And, if they want to come as residents to, share any information, or if they can, direct us to a source that we could then share during the walk, that would be great. Just to give them notice of what's going on. So,
and maybe Michael will.
Yeah, Michael actually attended last year, as well as Rebecca.
Right. And, I'm sure probably either one of them could talk off the cuff on this. So, great. Well, I thank you so much, Catherine, for taking the time to come by. I mean, like I said, I'm really keen on this, and I'm so glad you guys got the money.
Yeah, no, I appreciate. Yeah, that was a godsend, and we're very grateful for all of the people who have supported us, including the commission. So you guys have written 2 letters of support, and for our CPA funding application, and for the Mass Trails grant, and both of those came through. So thank you very much for your efforts there, and for the time on your agenda tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for coming by, Catherine.
So
Right,
be well.
We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks, Kat.
Thank you.
All right, so I've let Catherine go, and it was so nice. It's so nice to talk about that stuff, because like I said, I've been kind of following it through different committees, but not just. I mean, I guess I saw at least one of their meetings on the subject, and when we were on capital planning together, and elsewhere too. I think maybe in front of the select board. Anyway, all right. So moving on. We've got the updated proofs, and I'm going to try to bring them up. I'm going to share my screen. Hang on a moment. That's not what we want. There we go. Did the signs come up?
Yep.
I'll try to make this bigger. So Annie was nice enough to go back and pursuant to the conversation we had at the last meeting about and trying to refine these signs down. So first there was the issue of, we had the US seal at the top of the signs before. And there was that suggestion, I don't know where it was, a Jim that made it, or was it Michael Wyson or somebody, about the town seal.
It was me.
Oh, you, all right. Well,
It
there
was me.
credit is due. All right, so Kate suggested, and I made the sort of flippant remark that I thought the town seal was sort of banal. And I'm here tonight to eat crow in some sense, because, I was thinking about it, and I had actually previously looked at a lot of different town seals in Massachusetts, and many of them feature some pretty nifty graphics. Like typically they either feature some very prominent building in the town, some of them, it's usually some piece of architecture or some other kind of graphic, or in some of the towns actually, which is then grew controversial, there was a Native American depicted. And then I was reading about one town, I forget where it was, where then there was contention about that the representation was not authentic, so, and then no one wants to change the seal, one of those kind of things. So our town seal, I thought, well, it's not the most exciting graphically, but then when Annie came back with these proofs, I'm like, well, I kind of like it personally, because it is what it is. Like, it is what Southborough is, and it in a way it's this clean, almost kind of Puritan, just the words, nothing fancy. But I rather like it. I particularly like it on option B, I must say, just because of the way it sits. So that was part of it. We need to talk about that, whether we want to go back to the US seal or the Southborough town seal. I think, frankly, those are the only two choices that make any kind of sense. Personally, I just put my cards on the table. I like this. I kind of like the town seal on there. I think it makes, again, I think it makes a certain kind of logic, and it's certainly, obviously more specific to who we are as a town than just the US seal. Then there was the issue about, we all decided, I think we were in agreement, that we wanted the taken off of it. Remember, it was the Southborough Center Historic District. So we were in agreement to take that off, and taking that off, of course, opened up space. And option A was, when we had the there, was basically the full rhetoric. And we, had decided, because that rhetoric at the bottom about, placed on the National Register of Historic Places by the United States Department of Interior, is actually very standard language on many of these. And Annie, jump in and tell me I'm wrong anytime I screw this up. But since that rhetoric was actually standard on most, I think, if not, the vast majority of the ones that I saw that were these types of signs actually included that rhetoric. And initially, I wasn't a fan of it personally, because I just thought it was too many words on the sign, and therefore would compromise, force everything to be a little bit smaller. And you want the signs to be readable, for somebody who's zooming up, Route 85, going 40 or 50 miles an hour. But once the was taken off, again, I'll just say so, and feel free, everyone, to disagree. But I actually cottoned to option B with the expanded language at the bottom. It gives it a kind of gravitas in my mind that I sort of appreciate. So there are our two new options. Again, we could revert back to the US seal. We've agreed last time that there was a very strong consensus. Remember, Annie and I had originally pitched that sort of black toned one, right? And everybody seemed to really like the bronze better. So this would be, again, the color's off, but you get the idea. The bronze sign on the black pole, I personally prefer option B, but can we just turn it over to y'all to hear what you have to say? Kate, you want to start?
Sure. Yes, I like the town seal at the top just because it provides the basics, with the incorporated date of the town. I just like that. And though A is just very crisp and clean, I agree with you, Kevin. I like that it says the United States Department of the Interior line. I do actually like that. And so I actually am rooting for option B. I think it looks great, Annie. Thank you so much for working on it.
Of course.
Grant.
I completely agree with Kate. We talked previously about somehow incorporating the date of Southborough's incorporation into the sign, and how we would do that. And I think the seal incorporates that, so it's there if anyone's curious, but it's not, it doesn't take up too much space. And I agree. I like the weight that the and also just if people aren't familiar with what the register is and who does it, it's very clear. So also for other signs that I've seen like this, they always include the ones that I've seen always include the Department of the Interior line. So I quite like everything that's included in B, and also like the look of it as well.
Yeah, and I will add, by the way, that of course we're coming up in this tricentennial stuff. So it might be really, really nice to put the signs up with the town seal that has the date of incorporation, because we're creeping up on the tercentenary, as they sometimes call it. Now, Annie, when you sent this to me, I know you confessed that you like A better. So now the question is, have we swayed you?
So my first gut instinct when I first got this artwork from the vendor is, A is so clean, it's simple, it's really bold, it stands out. But then, Kevin, even after our initial conversation not weeks ago, but a couple weeks ago, you had me sold on B. So all that is to say, I like both. I would be very proud of either sign to be installed in our town representing our historic district. But I do think B is the best option. So I for all the reasons that, others have already said.
Wow. Well, are we sure? I mean, I'm very excited because this has taken a while, like we're actually close to voting to accept this. Are you all prepared to take a vote on this?
My only reservation is we had discussed at one point doing like a full-size printout and like holding it up just to make sure we have the right size. We've talked at length about the size, and I feel good about this. The 24 by 30, and I think others do as well. But before we say, that's it, do we want to explore a kind of full size rendering?
Can that be, let's say if we vote to accept option B, I think we can certainly, or accept that option. Can we get a printout and blow it up on a, you're smarter about this stuff than I am. I got no guess. It can that be done fairly easily, and mount it on some
cardboard or something.
Poster board, I would be in favor of that, because this is an expensive, and it's bronze and it's forever. So I do want to get it right. So why don't we, we can manage to, I think, scrape up the resources to do that. And of course, it's coming out of the to do this, costs $20 or whatever. We'll just get it done and let's do it.
Okay.
So, and I will say, I'm previewing some stuff later in the meeting, but I anticipate us having to have another very, very brief meeting in short order. So, but hopefully this won't delay it a month kind of thing. We can get it printed out right away and go out and take a good look at it. And I think it's smart, Annie, as much as I'd like to button it up and send it on its way tonight. Does that sound good with the rest of you folks?
Yes.
I agree that it makes sense. I just had a logistical question about how, would you take pictures and share it ahead of our next meeting, or would we all be there, or how would it work?
Yeah, I think, well, we could, I think we could, take some photos and, I think we could have, without posting an agenda, there could be 3 people there to look at this, and then convey it via photo to the other 2 when we meet, if that's okay.
That works. Yeah.
So
I trust your judgment. So I don't. If the 3 of you or whoever it is, think it looks great, then
I think it. I think it's. I was interested. Annie's been sort of the tip of the spear on this, leading it. And I know, Kate, you had expressed an interest in kind of looking if we went out into the field. So, or if you're not available, maybe Grant can come by and we'll take pictures so that, like, if it's us 3, then Grant and Jim can see it on the photos before we send it off. But yeah, I think as many eyes on it as we can get is the best way. So can we do right now a motion to accept option B as the one that we want to take to an actual physical mock-up and get it out in the field for.
So help me with the wording. I'm trying to type up this motion. So I'm going to say motion by Kate Battles to accept option B, contingent upon approval by the Historical Commission of a mock-up to something about size and scale.
Yeah, to confirm.
Confirm size and scale. That's the word.
And then a mock-up that confirms the appropriate size and scale.
Okay.
I think we're gonna, from what I've seen and looked and measured around town, I think we're gonna be very happy with this size because it's not mingy.
Okay, let me read it one more time. So I'm going to say motion by Kate Battles to accept option B, contingent upon approval by the Historical Commission of a mock-up to confirm the appropriate size and scale of the signage. That fine?
Yes, if somebody seconds it.
Yep. Okay, got
it. All right. So roll call vote on the motion. Miller, aye.
Battles, aye.
Bath, aye.
Farrington, aye.
Okay.
Great. 4-0. And I'm sure Jim is going to be happy with this. And he'll get to, one last look. So that's, thank you so much. Annie's had to go back and dig and work on this. And
gotta get it right.
That's right. It's all going to come to fruition. So now we will move to, on this subject while we're still here. I will say that, we've got the other issue of the 2 smaller signs, one for the townhouse, one for the library. And it's somewhat hanging fire because the library trustees are sort of reviewing basically what they want. And so I'm going to talk to Marguerite Landry and also Ryan Donahue at the library so that we all want to be on the same page. And I want them to be really happy. That said, I think what we're smart to do is get the main part of this nailed down and ordered, because that second part can come later. And because Annie is, as she's previously made clear to us, there's a long lead time. There's a long production time on these signs, like 5 or 6 months. We want to get these big ones in the works, and the rest of the order, is going to have to follow. Which I think is smart.
Yeah, the lead time for these is longer than the lead time for the smaller signs, just because of the size and the quantity of what we're reviewing tonight. So if we can get those in process prior, that's better.
Right.
Kevin, I did just want to ask one quick question. So when we do have the approval on the design, the vendor can start production once they have our payment.
Mhm.
And I believe we had forwarded the invoice to Mark and maybe Vanessa at the town hall. Do you have any update on where that is in the process?
We're sort of at baseline with that. I had when I was down at the townhouse, God, it's a month ago or more now. I did talk to Vanessa about this and asked her, I said, we've got this coming. What's the process? We've been advised to work with you and Mark Purple. And she said, oh, I've got it. Just when you're ready, come down with the stuff and I'll walk you through it and we'll take care of it. So that's all where we're at. So as soon as we have this approval, then of the actual artwork,
Yeah.
then I'll get you and I can get the ball rolling with Vanessa. And I think they've done it so many times that it's kind of like falling off a horse.
Right.
So I think they'll be able to.
If it's, I'm wondering, because that, invoice payment process, can take a couple weeks.
Right.
Is there any benefit to, getting that kind of in the queue for payment now?
Yeah, I can reach out on that subject and see if we can kind of get a jump on it.
Okay.
Because I think you're smart to suggest it. So I'll put that on my list to reach out.
Okay.
To Vanessa Hale and see what we can do.
Okay,
So,
cool.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody, on this one. And then we'll move on to the item 3 or 4, which is about Annie's work on the logo letterhead stuff. And here it is. Can you see it all?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So this is I'm sorry, that's the second page of it. The first page was with, the outline more as a kind of logo. And I think Annie had reduced slightly the historical. Was that it?
No, I actually increased the size of commission.
Okay.
So effectively makes
Right.
it look like historical is smaller, but commission is larger relative to Southborough specifically.
Right. So that's of course, with the outline, and then this would be more kind of a letterhead thing, and we'd have to figure out, and I think this can be done afterwards, like if it were letterhead, that this would go sort of at the top, and then you'd have like the address at the bottom, but I think what we're talking about now is the fundamental sort of conception of the art. And so I just like to get everybody's reaction to this. I like it very much. And I'm ready to move forward on this as well, contingent on how other people feel. So I don't know, Grant, do you have thoughts on this?
Yeah, to be honest, I remembered that we made a change, but I couldn't remember what the change that we had agreed on was. But as soon as I saw it when Annie sent it out today, I said that looks great. So I think I do think it looks great, and I would be happy to vote on this tonight.
And you know what I was thinking, like, for instance, this is going to be so nice to have. It's too late for us to do it this year, but I think, and I sort of regret that to some degree, but I think like for Town Day next year, I would really like historical to have a presence there and to be able to answer some questions and, promote some things that we're interested in. And wouldn't it be nice to have that, printed up on, you know what I mean? And even a kind of cloth that you put over your table, when you're sitting there.
By Town Day, do you mean Heritage Day?
Heritage Day, I'm sorry.
I don't think it's too late. If we wanted to do it, I think we could still sign up. Like I'm planning to do it for my business, and I think there's still
oh yeah,
it might be a lot to take on, but
yeah, that's what I was a little worried about, that it was just like, and but I thought, for instance, I imagine a scenario in which over this next year we're able to make a very much needed revision to the demolition delay bylaw. and perhaps some other things. And boy, would it be nice, I'm thinking now a year ahead, but to be able to bring some presence of the Historical Commission to that kind of affair. And just, I thought, I was looking forward to this and saying, well, at least we'll have, you know what I mean? Have some sense of identity, which would be really nice. So, well, but just to stick on the subject for the moment, Kate, do you have thoughts on the revised?
They're lovely. They're really nice. I love the one with the outline. I think they're great. So really, Annie, thank you so much for the work on this and the work on the signs, which I think look exactly like all the other signs that I see. And I think this is perfect. I think it's perfect. I think it's what we need.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, so I like it. Kate and Grant like it. I know you like it, Annie. You did it. So can we vote on this? I'd entertain a motion to accept these designs as a Southborough Historical Commission letterhead / logo.
Okay, I make the motion to accept the logo and letterhead designed by Annie Pfaff. Annie, do you want to, you would normally second this. Do you not want to because you designed it, or do you not care?
That's fine. I'll second it.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, good.
Good. Roll call vote. Miller, aye.
Battles, aye.
Oh, Pfaff, aye. Sorry.
Barrington, aye.
Excellent. 4-0. Wow, we're making progress. We might even get out of here early tonight. That's my goal. I'm trying to reform things on that subject. So thank you. And I'm going to stop my screen share.
Thanks again, Annie.
Sure. Happy to help.
Okay, so now we come to what we put off. We put it off in July because we had that super long meeting with Greg Walwer and the ACS stuff, and then it got punted in August because the meeting again grew immensely long for all kinds of reasons. We had remember the Southborough Village Society folks and all that stuff. And so finally, just to make sure that our housekeeping is clean and up to date, we should go through this officers thing, if that's okay with people. And again, I regret that Jim's not here, but then it'll go to November. And we might as well
just take care of it.
Yeah. And of course, we did this election. We did all these elections just in March.
Which is why, in case, I hope that nobody is offended the way that I just typed them up, but I figured that we were comfortable with maintaining these roles because we just went through this in March.
Right. We just started. But I will say, for the record, I'm perfectly content. And so if everyone else, but please speak your piece. You want to make a change? You want something different? Anybody? Are you happy?
We are great.
I'm very happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy. Annie's happy. I'm happy. Kate's happy. Jim is on vacation and happy.
Yeah, so he's happy. Yeah. Want me to make the first motion?
Sure.
Okay. I make a motion to reappoint Kevin Miller as chair of the Historical Commission through June 30th, 2023. Annie, do you want to second?
Yeah, sorry. I'm
All right.
still
You're
trying to
good.
work this flow.
Roll call vote. Miller is abstaining.
Battles, aye.
Pfaff, aye.
Barrington, aye.
Great. 3-0-1 on that one. Next, Annie, this is you.
Yep, that's me. So I move to reappoint Kate Battles as vice chair of the Historical Commission through June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Miller, aye.
Battles, abstain.
Pfaff, aye.
Barrington, aye.
So 3-0-1 on that one too. Passed.
Okay.
Next.
All right, I make a motion to reappoint Annie Pfaff as treasurer of the Historical Commission through June 30th, 2023.
Oh yeah, I'm seconding that one as well. Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Miller, aye.
Battles, aye.
Pfaff, abstain.
Barrington, aye.
wow, the fastest election in history. We're getting almost as good as the planning board, which is our ultimate goal. As quick as they do those things. But thank you all.
Thank you for typing this up. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh, good. I'm glad I can help with that. This I can do. I cannot design logos, but I can type.
Everybody's got their skills here, you know, so this is really awesome. Fantastic. So we're moving straight along. Chair support. I'm just going to get this out here on the record. I talked about this last week at the park working group, and I apologize to Grant for having to listen to me a second time. But the dig, done by Greg Waller and Archaeological Consulting Services of Guilford, Connecticut, has taken place over the last 2 weeks. Greg started work on the site the latter half of the week before Labor Day, so like in the 1st and the 2nd, and that's when they were digging the test holes every few meters around the site, concentrating actually on the sort of eastern side, down along the library's property line and stone wall, and then around into the proposed park triangle area as well. And they did that for a couple of days. On the first day of the dig, I went down and spoke to Greg briefly at the as he was actually unpacking and getting ready to go, just to sort of welcome him to town and wish him happy hunting and you know, I hope it goes well, kind of thing. And I did actually drop back. I believe it was the end of the first day, because Dan Blanchard, who had formerly been on the working group and of course does archaeological work over at Fay, had walked the site for a number of months and had been slowly collecting artifacts, which he asked if I would be willing to take custody of, and which I did. And since I had those in my possession, I asked if Greg Waller, if he wanted to see them, and he did. So I took those over at the end of the first day of the dig, and opened my trunk and showed them to him, and he was very interested. He was able to identify many of them on site, which was quite impressive, and it was all consistent actually with Dan Blanchard's earlier identification of certain shards of pottery and dishware and so on. So that was quite interesting. And then Greg went off and did his thing, and I didn't want to bother him any further. Labor Day weekend came and went, and then he was back on site with his team the second half of the week of Labor Day. If you recall, it rained very heavily over, I believe it was Labor Day itself and then the Tuesday afterwards. So they had to wait till things dried out a little bit, and then they were back. And at that point, they were back with the heavy equipment, the excavator, and very slowly and very carefully and with a great deal of discretion, you might say, we're sort of slowly scraping back soil, not far from where, if you know the pollinator garden on the library grounds, and then going to the north from there. So all along, like west of the library parking lot, and then up into the triangle, St. Mark's Triangle area, and extensively in that area. And actually, they even excavated at the very tip of the triangle area. That's where St. Mark's Street departs from Route 85, Marlborough Road. And that actually wasn't originally anticipated to be part of the work. And I mention this because it's significant that I really had a very high confidence in what Greg was doing, because he basically went where the evidence was pointing. And so even though they hadn't at all anticipated or planned to excavate way up at that point, that's sort of past like where the parking lot is or is slated to be. They dug sort of where he felt like he needed to based on the evidence that he had. And it was very difficult. I spoke to him a number of times because right until the day of the dig and even past when they began, he was constantly seeking. They had a lot of information, but he was always looking for more. And I was trying, and I actually had Sally Waters from the Historical Society on this, trying to find further, things that would help. So, as you know, at the end of the day, they found some artifacts, but there were no evidence of interments. So no graves were uncovered. That's not to say that there still might not be the possibility of interments outside the walls, because for instance, they did not dig anywhere inside that scrim of trees that was left in the park triangle area to the north. It's basically the northwest portion of the parcel, right adjacent to the OBG stone walls and adjacent to St. Mark Street. There's a fairly decent section there of trees that remain. They didn't excavate it all in there. And there were, other areas, for instance, very close to the stone wall on the library side. Again, that's treed, where they didn't dig. And the reason they didn't dig there is because there is no plans for development there. So any place that we're not going to build anything or do anything to, they left undisturbed. That's considered best practices, even though if you were doing what he described as a more academic dig, you might try to get in there, and so even when they were coming close to the trees on the library side near the parking lot, I saw what they did there. He was very, very careful, for instance, not to damage any of the vegetation or not to damage the tree roots, of course, some of which are very close to the topsoil. So it was a very fine balance of what he was doing. There was a lot of chatter from various quarters as it was going on. Why is he doing it this way? Why is he doing it that way? Why not this? Why not that? Of course, part of the dig took place on town property, the library, and part of it took place on land that's still, again, I'm not interested in I can't follow, it's still St. Mark's land, but the easement and all that stuff. So it was partly on St. Mark's, partly on town property. But at the end of the day, again, no graves. But the question is, should we be satisfied? And from my perspective, I am. I have, I talked to Greg. I followed what he was doing very, very, very closely. And of course, all of this falls under the oversight and will be reviewed by the full-time professionals at MHC. So personally, I could not be happier with the work he did. I could not think any more of his integrity and the thoughtful way that he went about doing the work. Now, what's the upshot? He identified, and I will say that the Tuesday after the dig concluded, I had about a 30 or 40 minute conference call with Greg and with Rob Kuklovich of St. Mark's, who's of course the CFO and has been the point person on this whole project. And so Greg ran over his findings both to Rob and to myself at that point. And it was a very, very interesting and productive call. And I think it even clarified, Rob had previously heard all this stuff, but I think it clarified it even further for him. What Greg explained was that at the end of the day, no interments again, but there were 3 areas of concern, as he put it, or I think he characterized them as red flag areas. One was a foundation that I had previously seen. It was very obvious and easy to spot, just slightly to the north of the stone wall in the triangle area. And that was an old foundation that Greg believed dated actually to the very late 19th century, possibly early 20th century, based on a mortar that was found within the stones, and there's brick there. And he felt that there was actually a concrete pad that probably supported some kind of chimney at some point. So for various reasons, he thought it wasn't, for instance, a very, very old structure. That was one area. The second area of concern was actually quite near the pollinator garden, and that was based on an 1898 map. He thought it was about 15 feet, I believe, north of the garden. There was an area that, again, likely contained some structure connected to the Burnett property that had been torn down to make way for the library. But that, again, he felt that that structure was not particularly significant. The third area that he marked and will be reporting to MHC was what he described as a possible debris field that was more actually almost central inside the proposed park area. So north of the stone wall, south of the graded, the proposed road that's been actually graded through the parcel. And that's marked. So, you know, what he said to both Rob and myself, that in his judgment, there was no rationale, compelling rationale for further investigation. However, he allowed that based on those three areas and what he was obliged to report to the state, that the state may take a different view. And he said it's possible, because he emphasized the fact that he in his belief, Massachusetts is perhaps the strictest state in the country when it comes to this kind of archaeological investigation, that they may ask for more. And if they do, he's got to go do it. And so this is one of the reasons why I feel so personally content and satisfied that you know, again, you roll this back, and the point of us bringing all this up in the first place and asking for the dig as a commission is that we felt that we were duty bound by statute, based on the evidence that we had, sketchy though it was, documentary, fences of stone, maps, and so on, that we had to report it to the MHC. We did. They made their recommendation, and that was for a dig, and that we conveyed that in very clear and I hope forceful but respectful terms to St. Mark's, and they eventually agreed that that was the right course of action, and so they acted. And again, the professionalism of the dig, I think, is above reproach, and so that's where we're at. He indicated to Rob and myself that it would take about 30 days because it's a very extensive report that he has to prepare for the state. He may be, you know, better to, what is it, under promise and over deliver on that. So he may be able to turn out that report quicker than that. But he said up to 30 days, and it may take the state up to 30 days to respond. So from the point of about, I don't know what it was, September 10th or 12th, it could be 60 days. And so it might not be until November till the town gets the all clear. It might be sooner. It also, depending on the response by the state, it might be later if they come back and say, well, and he gave the hypothetical that the State Historical Commission might come back and say, well, listen, you may think you're done. But based on the fact that, you know, St. Mark's is one of the oldest private schools in New England, and this is a highly, highly, highly historic area, we want you to go back and do a little further investigation, for instance, of these foundations and debris fields, or debris field. So, you know, he has to allow for maybe more demands, but he felt well satisfied that in the area that is proposed to have things put on them, that he doesn't feel, they did not find any evidence of graves, and he doesn't feel that there's any further material of significance there. And we'll see what the state decides on that. So does that, I'm sorry that was so long-winded, but I think it's really, really important after this having gone on for so long that I just get it out on the record as clearly as I'm able to. And I hope I didn't mess it up at all, but, and, you know, for instance, with the, as regard the matter of the artifacts that remain in my possession, when I spoke to Dan about this, Dan Blanchard, I'm in full agreement that, of course, these artifacts are the property of St. Mark's. And there was some discussion about what their disposition would be. St. Mark's does have a archives. And so they may, you know, choose to house them, maybe depending on what kind of agreement is finally made with the town about that disposition of the land. Maybe it'll be agreed that the town should hold on to them. Maybe they end up at the Historical Society. I don't know, but as it stands, that's St. Mark's property. I am simply holding it as custodian for the moment. So anybody have any questions or thoughts about this? Again, I really have, and I have to say, for many months now, I've had a great working relationship with St. Mark's and Rob Kuklovich, and I have a lot of respect for their forthcomingness and the way Rob has handled it, and tremendous respect for Greg Walwer and ACS. I think if you remember back to this is a fairly fraught kind of situation many months ago, and I feel very good about it, you know, that we work in this partnership with other groups. There's still, of course, a lot of things, as Grant knows, being with me on the working group, there's still a lot of stuff to work out. But our little part of it, I think, has come out, you know, really good. And I mean, obviously, to be able to clear that land and to go forward with a clean conscience on the rest of the issues that need to be resolved, I think we did our part to clear up something that was really hanging over it, you know, whether or not there are these Native American burials or any other kind of burials there. And I think we have our answer. So, anybody want to bail me out here, or should we move on?
No, that's great. Thank you for that info. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I just had one. Oh,
Sure. Go ahead, Grant.
Oh no, I just had a quick question. I contrary to what you said, this is very helpful for me as well. I was in the car during our meeting the other day, so I think I missed a bit of this. But so where it stands with the state is that, you know, there's 30 days for the report, then 30 days for the state to get back. But if, you know, they could give us or give St. Mark's the all clear, but it's also there's also potential that they could require more digging. Is that right? And then that would require.
Yeah, exactly.
Be out of the season by that point, right? Because it'd be almost December or something.
Yeah, that's problematic, and I'm no expert. I know this information doesn't particularly please the folks that have to do things like lay asphalt, because I know it gets hard later in the season. Although, again, I'm no expert. So yeah, he had to allow for the possibility that, you know, maybe he'll get the report in quicker. Maybe they'll answer quicker. But, you know, he also said somewhat wryly that he expected if the state had 30 days to answer, they would take 29. You know, so, and I will say that it was way back in June that he gave me the estimate of when he would have the clearance to begin work as Labor Day. And I was going around, because as a kind of liaison to the select board, for instance, I was going to them and telling them this, half thinking, oh, you know, if I'm way off, they're not going to like it. But it turns out, you know, he started the dig before Labor Day weekend and he completed it just after. So, so far his estimates on time have been pretty accurate.
Okay, thanks.
So we'll see. All right, thank you so much for sitting through that. I'll be much quicker on the rest of this. 42 Main, the AKA the Doc Stone House. I had another email exchange on Sunday with Jim Shea, the head of St. Mark's Board of Trustees, and trying to find my notes here on but I don't really need them. Where we're at is they had struggled actually they had a couple of architects of choice, and they struggled to get them to sort of respond. And, it's just, I think the architects were feasting and not, responding. So they had other work and were really busy and all that stuff. So there was a bit of a lag, both, there's a lot of things to get into place. It's going to be a big commitment of money on the part of Faye, to do this project. And so they have to get the trustees and the people who are going to pay for this sort of lined up. They have to get their professional team lined up. However, things are making progress. There were a couple of architects they were eyeing initially, and I believe I mentioned them in an earlier call, but now they have settled actually on a gentleman named Richard Curl. And the firm, it's a small shop. He used to be a partner in a larger firm, but has gone out on his own. The firm is Curl, C-U-R-L Architecture. Richard Curl is the principal, and they're out of Melrose. You can find them on the web, curlarch.com. And he's really good and really impressive, and has sort of been, as his website describes, interested in the relationship between contemporary and traditional architecture. So in a way, they're trying to preserve as accurately and respectfully as possible the envelope of the building while making it adaptable to their needs as an institution on the inside. And so he seems like someone who'd be really well suited to do this work. Richard Curl also happens to sit on the Melrose Historic District Commission in his apparently hometown and where his business is located. So I take that as a very good sign as well, that basically he's doing the same work as a volunteer that we're doing. So Jim indicated, let me just take a quick look at his message, that he was trying, I don't have it, but he was, I believe, scheduled to or anticipating signing a contract with Mr. Curl's firm this week or next. Furthermore, he had indicated that they have formally secured the services of an attorney named Jean Pelletier, who's a Boston lawyer who specializes in historic preservation issues. I think they're looking at it partly from possibly a grant-making perspective. And so, he's got a team that he's putting together. And I said, the concern we have, of course, with the demolition delay thing is that it was invoked in, I believe, March, and it runs through January. And so, the question has come up to me several times, I think, on our meetings. Well, will they withdraw the demolition delay application? And I asked him that question again on Sunday. And he said, and previously he'd indicated that they've had conversations about exactly that with the Board of Trustees. But he feels at this point that the responsible and prudent thing to do is to get the numbers in before he's willing to make that final commitment. And I understand it, because I think this is going to be expensive. And he said, for instance, that Richard Curl will be using, there's a kind of outside estimator of costs that they bring in, in other words, the architect presents the plans, but they want a third party estimate / verification of what all this would cost. And then they have to bring it to the trustees, and then they have to vote, and then they have to fundraise, and everybody hopefully opens their wallets. So I again, not to sound like Susie Sunshine here, but it's another really good story in that Jim Shea could not be more responsive. I said this before. He could not be a nicer person to deal with. Every time I send him a message, and it's typically like on a Sunday afternoon at 2:30, at 2:45, he's answered. The guy is amazing, so he's been very forthcoming with information. I believe really sincerely that he's very serious about this, and he really, really cares. And like I told you before, he's looking at this as a kind of comprehensive vision for preservation throughout the campus, not just limited to the Stone House. And so I hate to say it again, because I've said it about 3 or 4 times now, but stay tuned and hold on, because I really, really, really believe we're going to get a good result out of this, barring something absolutely catastrophic coming back with finances or structure. But they've already had the structure examined several times now. And there's nothing, you know what I mean? There's no like termite bomb in that building or anything like that. So stay tuned. We're going to get a good result, I hope. And I again, thank you so much to Jim Shea for being so forthcoming about information with me and so willing to work with me, which I've really appreciated. 84 Main Street, I got nothing to say on that. I held off on inviting Mr. Deli Priscoli to appear before us because I thought he's got his hands full with this Fayetteville Hall stuff and all that, you know, and the select board and the right of first refusal and the preservation restrictions. So I laid out, but I'm going to try to invite him either in October or November to speak with us. And we still have to review, because I know Grant has an interest in that, and the landscape master plan. So that's pending. The preservation restriction activity I put on as item 3 or C here, only in relation to actually Fayetteville Hall. If you followed that stuff, let's congratulate our friends at the Historical Society, you know, both for the sort of smashing, you know, return they've gotten, you know, on the auction of their copy of the Declaration of Independence. That's given them this huge windfall that's allowing them to, in a very generous deal with Mr. Deli Priscoli, to sort of take over Fayetteville Hall, to renovate it to a fairly well and restore it, the exterior, and make it this beautiful showplace, which is going to house all kinds of not only the museum, but cultural, artistic, civic activities. I mean, it is going to be unbelievable when it's done. So I'm very excited about it. I congratulate the select board for, I think, making the right decision and releasing the right of first refusal and not holding up the deal. So good on them, good on the Historical Society, good on Mr. Deli Priscoli. And I think the town is going to really get something wonderful out of this. So that's all good. Where it factors into us is that, as you know, or as you may know if you followed this, that although the Historical Society took the position that they didn't want to embrace a preservation restriction prior to the renovation or the restoration of the building, I should say, they are fully willing and committed, in fact, to taking on a preservation restriction on the building after the restoration is complete. And so Michael Wyson reached out to me and asked me, because he would like that to be overseen by the Historical Commission, just as we oversee the preservation restriction on 84 Main, the Burnett Mansion. And the question was, you know, were we willing to take that on? And I took the liberty of saying on our behalf, you're damn right we are. By all means, thank you very much. And so that's just pending. I just wanted to alert you that you know, would be coming down the road. I mean, I think that's clearly in our purview, and there's precedent, obviously, for it, for us having oversight over that. So I look forward to the renovation and to us actually making sure that building stays that way forever when it's beautifully restored. Lastly, on the scenic roads bylaw, now this has been a long road on the scenic roads bylaw, and I did watch or attend virtually the planning board's meeting last Monday, where they spent a long time on the trees first, and then finally moved on to the scenic roads bylaw. where they are at on it is that in some, I actually rewatched that portion of the meeting earlier this evening to make sure I had it exactly straight, is that they've made the commitment to just to go on and do it themselves, essentially. And I don't know where, for instance, conservation stands with this. I think they're in a similar position with us, is that there were some roadblocks or some thoughts and some sort of conceptual things in that, we had made the suggestion that planning possibly entertain definitions, for the scenic roads bylaw, and as opposed to just making it a kind of sweeping administrative measure. And they contemplated that. And I know Marty Houlihan, of course, was at our last meeting and presented to us her thinking on that and all the work she did, which was a tremendous amount. That they had sort of investigated that and explored it. I think certainly Marnie did quite thoroughly, but ultimately they came to the conclusion that they wanted to sort of stand pat, essentially. There was some minor change in the language of it, but that they didn't want to go down the road of having to make an adjudication of each and every road. They just wanted to sort of bring them all in. And I think with that, on the meeting last Monday, I think Marnie had sort of indicated that she'd been busy. Everybody's, it's a lot of stuff, that everyone's got a lot of stuff on their plates, and that but hadn't updated historical or conservation on the subject. And I haven't heard anything since. So I think they're at a point where they've decided that they'll just they'll make it more an administrative matter, and to sort of go it alone. So I don't particularly feel, especially with Jim not here, actually, any compulsion to sort of add to that, except to wish them well. And again, I think we're all in agreement that we support the principle of stone walls and preserving trees as historic assets. But I think that they're not, my thought about the whole thing at the beginning was, again, if the three different conservation, planning board, and historical were to have a kind of deliberative input into this, then it would be sort of appropriate for us to participate. But then the planning board having made the decision not to sort of define things and not to go the deliberative route, but simply an administrative one, that sort of, and I understand the motivation, by the way, and as an individual voter, I'm inclined to support it. But again, I think I'm just sort of letting it rest personally, unless anyone has, wants to. And I think because there's some split feeling on the commission, that's also probably the friendliest gesture that we can make, is to sort of wish our friends well and let them take it to town meeting. Because it wasn't, I didn't see our sort of place. And I think they finally came around to that feeling also, that since they were going to handle it in this manner, that it was sort of, just best to sort of move on for them. And I think they're actually mostly, quite frankly, preoccupied with the tree bylaw. The meeting last week had a very, very long section of input from representatives and attorneys from NSTAR, who had a sort of series of I wouldn't call them objections, but points that they wanted to make about the bylaw and recommendations that they had. And so I think the planning board, my sense is that they're mostly focused on getting that tree bylaw really nailed down to their satisfaction prior to the town meeting. And therefore wanted to use, again, scenic as purely administrative. So I understand. But it's it. Anybody want to differ with the characterization? I know Grant, like you have strong feelings on the subject.
Yeah, I think you know how I feel about it. I would be fine sponsoring it, but I think I'm outweighed, or co-sponsoring, I guess it would be, but I feel like I'm outweighed here, so I'm fine with that. I would also be open to doing something like, I think we had talked about at our previous meeting about voting, you know, how like select board and advisory vote on whether or not they approve the article. Doing something like that, I would be open to that, but I'm also open to doing nothing and just letting planning board.
Yeah, I like I said, I think maybe the safest, if I'm reading the room right, I think the safest move is to sort of let them do their thing and stay out. And again, it's complicated. Like I said, my thought from the beginning was that if the scenic roads bylaw had a sort of deliberative definitional component, then we had a role in it. But if it doesn't, then I just don't see it. And I understand, for instance, the idea of co-sponsorship, but I thought to myself, well, this isn't the House of the Senate. We're a co-sponsor. Of course, if you're the sponsor of a bill, you try to get as many co-sponsors till you get to that magic number that means the bill's going to pass, because half the House is co-sponsoring. You know what I mean? Like this is more of a much more of a sort of symbolic gesture. And I thought, unless we can present unanimity on that front, we might be doing them more harm than good. So I just thought, well, we'll just back out. And,
sure.
However, we might be meeting before town meeting again. So I think we can let it hang, if that's all right with everybody. Does that? All right, good. On future initiatives, I'll just do this really, really quickly. The select board that began their meeting tonight at 6:30, FYI, if you didn't notice it or catch it already, has on their agenda something that concerns us. It's actually the last item of business before public comment tonight. And it concerns the flags in the old burial ground, specifically the battle flags or the flags in toto. As you know, right now, there are 6 battle flags that are placed by apparently by a VSO in town, a veteran service organization, as well as the American flag. And my understanding is that the select board is going to take a vote tonight whether or not to ask the historical commission for a recommendation on the disposition of those flags going forward. If they do, and I anticipate and also hope that they will, I want to act on that request immediately. And so I am alerting you folks that if we get that ask tonight, I'm going to ask for a meeting quick, within the next week or so. It will be a very brief meeting. It will have one item on the agenda and one only, is to have a discussion and then take a vote about what we think as a commission. This is not a public hearing. If I anticipate what I think they're going to do, it's going to ask for our opinion. And so we're going to give it. I'm ready. I've done some background on this quite a bit. And I know this has come in front of the Historical Commission before, prior to my arrival. And so I just alert everybody to get your thoughts in order. And because we can't obviously deliberate outside the parameters of a meeting. So think about it, look into it, do your due diligence, because I'm going to call a meeting if they ask us to do it tonight. So that's the most pressing immediate one. The other things are, I do want to I'm just throwing it out there. I've got 4 things that I think are important. And one is the tricentennial. As you know, we asked for a seat on that whenever the select board formulates a tricentennial commission. We've asked for a seat on it. And we've discussed already sort of rotating that, because it's going to be a long-term commitment. So there's that, item 1. Secondly, I do think, and it's really almost only on one point, that we're going to have to really knuckle down and do a revision of the DDBL going forward, if only because, you know, the cutoff date is properties built before 1925, right? And every year that passes, that gets in a sense more out of date, if you follow what I'm saying. We're going to have to do the revision on that. And I would propose, for instance, you know, a moving window of perhaps 75 years instead of a fixed date for properties that fall under the jurisdiction of the DDBL. But of course, that's going to mean going back to town meeting, and it's a big ball of wax. So it's going to be, that's going to be hard work. Thirdly, I have kicked around for quite a while the idea of compiling some sort of oral history project in the town. And it's funny because I've thought about this. The VA actually does something like this, where they, you know, interview veterans and try to compile their stories. Sam Stivers actually approached me with the same idea, you know, that maybe this is something the Historical Commission could get involved in, perhaps in conjunction with the Historical Society, perhaps in conjunction with some of the schools. You could imagine, for instance, a high school history project where the students go out and interview, you know, senior citizens in the town that have real stories that we're trying to preserve before they're lost. And then in the same vein, and this is something also that actually Sam Stivers suggested to me, is that about developing a strategic plan for identifying, marking, and preserving points of interest throughout town. You know, we've been somewhat focused on, of course, the downtown district because of the National Register thing, but we've got obviously other very important areas of town. I mean, this is one of the things I like about the Fayetteville Hall business, because it brings some attention over to that area. So I think, I don't want to do it tonight. I want everyone to be here, and we're already an hour and a half in, but maybe we can do some sort of prioritization of those. And if you have other things you want to suggest, that we can take up at our next meeting. But I think a strategic plan for overall the tercentenary celebrations, the idea of a possible oral history project in conjunction with other groups, and a revisiting of the DDBL are my top projects. I don't know if anybody offhand had anything else I can add to this so that we discuss it more comprehensively later. I want to be careful about not biting off more than we can chew, because I think a lot of boards do this. I don't want to be the board that does a lot of talking and not a lot of doing. You know, so I want to be cautious about it. And if you think it's too much, like the oral history thing, maybe we can pass that off, but maybe we can at least get it started. Or, you know, I love the idea of it being like a school project, that some of the schools, they send, you know, those kinds of kids. I mean, I just love it. You know, the idea of let's say a high school senior history class coming out to the community. You know, Sam mentioned, you know, the what's the group, the Dull Men's Club, you know,
The Dull Men's Club.
and he said there's some candidates over there that'd be really, you know, these are guys with really interesting stories, and we should get them down before we lose them. Because, you know, I said to him that one of the things that I've discovered just from my perch, such as it is, that I get every once in a while some inquiry by email from somebody who, you know, a month or so ago, sent me an email, a woman in California inquiring about a relative of hers that she seemed to think had a street named after him. I won't say what it was, but sure enough, it was. And I went digging and found out that this fellow had, well, the reason he had a street named after him, and she had no idea about it, I think it was an uncle, was because he had been a town clerk. back, I believe, in the 40s or early 50s. And so I think I called Sally and talked to her, and I did some digging online myself. And you find this stuff out and you think, how is it that, like some of these stories sort of disappear into the ether because they're not, got down? And we've had this conversation like record keeping and things that get lost in floods. And now, of course, with the, it could all be digitized. We can get like these oral histories up into the cloud. And I've watched the VA ones where they like interview, veterans of different wars and about their experiences. And they're awesome. They're both like fascinating and sometimes heartbreaking and very moving. And, every town has stories like that. So I thought that'd be a great idea.
I love these four. I love that, those four initiatives, Kevin. And even if it's not something we like take on necessarily, like right now, I mean, but if we sort of come up with the business plan, if you will,
Right.
of how to, what we're looking for, who might coordinate it, that kind of thing, I think it's great. So thanks for coming up with that list.
Yeah, and it's funny, I got
I have a high school senior too, by the way. So that would be like, I think, wow, geez, that'd be a cool
Yeah, let's get him
something
on
for him to do, you know?
Yeah, in a way, sort of to teach like the sort of younger generation about what the town is all about, and I just think it's even if we could just sort of facilitate that a little bit and sort of talk to some people. I know it just all this takes time.
Well, it's another way to partner sort of with the society too, because just because I've helped teach little classes where the third graders come and do little walking tours of the museum, and I've helped with that. And so this is another thing that I'd say it's just a really kind of feel good, nice initiative too. So
yeah, I mean, Michael, and maybe Michael would really be interested in this, because you could imagine going into the new Historical Society Museum in a Fayetteville Hall and seeing like a wall of monitors in some part of it where you could actually like watch these stories.
Yeah, it's really neat. Yeah, it's a great thought.
So yeah, all right. So I'll just hold that stuff, but I just wanted to throw it out there for future consideration. But like I said, on the issue of the flag, if asked, we're going to act. I'm going to ask the meeting. I don't know what the vote's going to be. I don't know what your thoughts are. We won't discuss it now, but get ready.
Okay.
In terms of timing for that, are you thinking like later this week or next week? Or
I am thinking, of course, I need 48 hours to post an agenda.
Right.
So,
And and the town clerk's office is closed Thursday and Friday of this week. So
probably not this week, I don't think.
no, because we're out at a conference.
I would like to act as expeditiously as possible as a friend of the select board and before town meeting. Because I think that would be an important issue to resolve, and I'm very aware and grateful of the efforts kind of moving this along. So I think it would sort of help clear everybody's docket a little bit if we could act very, very promptly. So yeah, probably given the closing to the clerk's office sometime next week.
Yeah.
Week, okay. If asked, I could have, we could have gone into this tonight, but it felt inappropriate. But because their agenda is public and I've seen it, I could at least let you know that it's there. I have no idea what they're going to do. So we have to approve meeting minutes of August 23rd. This next item, and I've read them and I made my comments, and Kate. And I apologize sincerely because
don't worry about it. I don't care. Edits are bad.
They're so good that I forgot to look them over earlier, but I sent back my comments and you redid them
And I got a few more from Grant and sent those out. So they are all up to date, and I don't ever mind edits, last minute edits. It's not a problem at all.
Well, we are spoiled rotten. I'll just say that again.
Listen, I'm happy I can help in this one way. So.
So does anyone have any other corrections or edits or anything? No?
I have one. If that's
Okay.
Oh, great, sorry.
No, that's fine. I put it in as a comment and maybe it didn't get.
Oh, did I miss it?
No, it's fine. Line 55.
Yeah.
This is more, it was generally a question. I could be wrong, but it says or I guess it's 54 and 55. Ms. Battles agreed with the other members that aesthetics were not in the purview of the, I thought that was probably referring to the Historical Commission.
Yeah, what'd I say? I'm not looking at it right now. What?
DPW.
Oh, yes.
So I thought that we could change it to HC because I think that's probably.
Sorry, you're right.
Okay.
I'll
That's
make
my
that
understanding.
change. And Kevin, I'll make that change and send that final draft to you so you can submit them.
Okay.
So Annie, when you read this motion, just say as amended at the end. You're
Okay.
muted, Annie.
Oh, sorry. Give me 1 second to pull the motion thing up again.
Sure, don't worry about it.
Kate, your minutes are like reading a good story.
Ah,
It's so good.
Settle in for 15 minutes and coffee or something, and yeah.
thanks.
All right, so I move that we approve the meeting minutes from August 23rd, 2022.
As amended.
Oh, as amended, yes.
Second,
Okay, moved and seconded. Roll call vote. Miller, yes.
Battles, yes.
Pfaff, yes.
Farrington, aye.
Thank you so much. Done. Now, scheduling, because we're not scheduled beyond tonight. And as I said, Kate, perhaps again, one item, like half an hour or less, meeting perhaps next week, but in terms of a regularly scheduled meeting, looking at October, I don't know why or how, I vaguely remember, we were meeting, Michael, like the early 6 meeting, and we moved it to 7. I know, Annie, you had like child care concerns and stuff, and that made sense to me. And I like a later meeting myself. And we somehow got from Thursday to Tuesday. Tuesday's a little problematic. If you're a devotee of the select board, which I am, there's that aspect of it, but it's actually also the booking of the Zoom rooms, because Tuesday's a popular night, is a little bit more difficult. I can get around it, but I did wonder if there was any inclination to move back to Thursday, which I think we have been meeting prior to that, like Thursday at 7, and I think Jim, I might have had something going on later. I'm making a commitment. You're gonna be no more, and we're at 1:43, and I want out of here in the next 5 minutes. I don't want any more meetings any longer than at most 2 hours, and hopefully less, because I know he had some concern about something else, maybe on Thursdays. Andy, how would a 6:30 time work for you? Or is that too early?
Yeah, we can make it work. I will say, just in general, Thursday is better for me than Tuesday. And I do seem to recall it was Jim who wanted to move from Thursday to Tuesday. So I kind of feel like we need to confer with him before making all sorts of changes.
Okay, well,
yeah, I think 6:30 probably would be fine. I can make it work.
I was thinking maybe if we went back to 6:30, if we moved just back a little bit, like instead of 6, instead of 7, if we cut it in the middle between 6:30, and I made the ironclad commitment not to run my mouth so much in the shorter meetings, that we could do it on Thursday and still get it over with, in time for Jim to go do whatever he turn into a superhero at 9 o'clock or whatever he
I
does
mean,
on Thursday nights.
6 o'clock is just not feasible for me, but 6:30 I could do if once a month if we had to.
Okay, well, we can, well, I want to Grant to talk. You got input.
Oh yeah, I'm not sure if it was Jim. It might have been me. I have the working group Thursdays at 7.
Me too. But it's not always like every.
It had been weekly, and then it was twice a month, and then
Right.
slowed down and it sped up, and so it's kind of all over the place with that. But that's generally been Thursdays.
Maybe we'll have to go.
Tuesdays, I agree. The select board. Monday, I like to watch the planning board, but whatever.
Yeah.
So
I
Wednesday,
also have CPC usually on Thursdays. But if anything, for me, it's like it's easier for me to like just block Thursdays and say Thursday is going to be my town commitment day, and work it out between the two committees. But I mean, I don't know. Thursdays was so much better, I think.
Well, how about this? Here's what I propose. Maybe for safety's sake, if we schedule one more Tuesday meeting for October and then try to revisit this. And if we do have a short notice meeting, like in the next week or so, we can also, presuming that Jim is available for that, revisit the topic, if that's okay, just so I get something down in my mind. And so for instance, the special town meeting is Thursday, the 13th.
Mhm.
So I was thinking perhaps either the week of October 17th or October 24th, which would put the meeting on either the 18th or the 25th. Today being, of course, the 20th. But 4 weeks from tonight would be the 18th.
So I'm out of the country on the 18th, so I won't be able to participate.
We
Good
could,
for you.
I can. I
That's
forgot to
fine.
mention. Other than Thursdays, in which I have the working group, I generally have flexibility on Monday and Wednesdays as well. I don't know if we talked about that, but
I personally can't do Monday and Wednesday unless it's late.
Sure.
Because
Okay.
I'm in class. So how about Tuesday, the 25th at 7, October 25th? It just is tentative. And again, given that we may have to meet before then, we can kind of revisit this, but just sort of pencil it in. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, perfect.
Tuesday, October 25th at 7 p.m., which would be consistent with what we've been doing. And we'll kind of maybe go back to this. And, yeah, it's like, Monday night, it's the planning board. Tuesday night, it's the select board. Wednesday night's a bit of a wild card. And then Thursday, it's been the working group. Hopefully, at some point, Grant, that will be over for both of us. We'll get
we've been saying that since February, Kevin.
I know, we'll get
Wednesday is usually advisory, and two of us have other halves that are involved in that all night.
Right.
So
Right. So, there's always something. We'll leave it at that, and we'll see what happens if we have to schedule another meeting. There's no other business, although I will mention, I had some outreach a little bit. There may be another demolition delay issue coming before us. I won't, it was an inquiry. And I provided the information on the bylaw, but we'll see about that. There's no attendees, so there's no public comment. There's some invisible person, so I think we can.
Sam Stivers had better things to do tonight.
I know.
He does have better.
Damn.
Well, I am confident that Sam will be watching us tomorrow. So hi, Sam, when you drop by on the tape. So we just need a motion to adjourn, I believe.
I make a motion to adjourn.
second,
All right, motioned and seconded. Miller is aye.
Battles, aye.
Pfaff, aye.
Farrington, aye.
Am I allowed to say one thing before we pull the plug on this?
Yeah,
um,
wild.
is that at some point, I would love to see you all. I mean, I see some of you in person. I see you individually. I run into you. I mean, I run into Kate on the street. I see Grant, but I'd like to see you all. Can we think about that? And Kate, what are the requirements now? If we meet in person, do we have to use the owl?
I think so, and you have to get approval from the town administrator, I believe.
All right. So, I mean, it's down the road, I guess, but I thought, first of all, I like the owl, except the miking is terrible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It drives me absolutely crazy because whoever sits, even on a select board meeting, who's ever at the end of the table, you can never hear them, So the audio is terrible. And I'm hoping, if anybody's listening, that the town invests in some individual microphones for each
Mhm.
section, but I love the owl because it does help with access and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think we would go quicker sometimes, and it would be less stressful and just nice to see your faces in person. So much, if we could get together. I know that's problems. It's easier sometimes, like for Annie to be home, the baby and all that. I don't know. It's a fantasy for the future, I suppose. But well, thank you all very much, and I hope everyone has a good night. And I'll keep you posted if we do need to have another meeting.
Sounds great. Thanks,
Thanks,
Kevin.
everyone.
Hey, I'll send you the next draft with Grant's edit that I missed. Sorry about that. To
No
you
worries.
next. So I'll send that to you so you can send those in.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a great night.